Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating mission for you today. We're going to figure out how you can identify, navigate, and I guess manage all those hidden unmapped risks in any complex system.
Right, the stuff you don't even know is there yet.
Exactly. And to get there, we're pulling apart this really unique document. It's called Series 3, What a DSL Can Learn from a Cartographer.
Which is such an interesting title right off the bat.
It really is.
Mm.
And just for some context, a DSL is a designated safeguarding lead. So this is a highly specialized role in education or, large organizations. It's the person whose entire mandate is basically to keep people, usually kids or vulnerable individuals, safe from harm.
Yeah, but, and I think this is key, even if you don't work in safeguarding, the framework we're unpacking today will fundamentally change how you, as a leader, look at the unknowns in your own organization.
Oh, totally. Because the premise here is just brilliant. It asks us to treat the safeguarding lead not as some, administrator behind a desk, but as a cartographer.
Right, a map maker. And if you think back to historical, medieval maps, there's always that distinct edge, right? Where the detailed drawings of coastlines and cities just abruptly end.
You hit the edge of the parchment
And boom, just a massive expanse of empty space. And they'd often sketch, a sea monster in the middle of that void.
here be dragons.
Exactly. But that visual admission of ignorance is what makes early maps so honest.
Yeah.
The cartographer is documenting the very limits of their data. They're saying, quite literally, I have no idea what lies beyond this line.
Right. And the core realization of the cartographer, which really drives this whole deep dive, is that blank space on a map does not mean empty space. It just means uncharted space.
That distinction changes everything, doesn't it? When they left the edges of the world blank, they weren't saying the oceans ceased to exist.
Right. There was still water there.
Yeah. And in the world of safeguarding, this translates to this sobering reality. An absence of clarity does not equal an absence of risk. Just because a danger isn't highly visible or making a lot of noise doesn't mean the environment itself is secure.
Which completely flips our natural human bias, regarding the unknown.
For sure.
Because in most management scenarios, we look at a lack of data or maybe a quiet department, and we feel relieved, phew, no news is good news.
We operate entirely on that assumption.
But this source material is arguing that no news is actually the exact terrain we need to be analyzing the hardest. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is populating these blank spaces today?
Well, we're conditioned to react to the loudest problem in the room. But what fills the blank spaces today isn't sea monsters. It's subtle, undefined risks that just haven't boiled over into a crisis yet.
Like what, specifically?
So the source gives great examples. We're looking at emerging online risks, which honestly evolve at a pace that institutional policy just cannot match.
Oh yeah, by the time you read the policy, the app is dead.
Exactly. And then there are intricate peer dynamics operating totally outside the view of adults or management.
We're talking about deep cultural nuances,
Okay.
or those frustrating gray areas between a minor concern and a major safeguarding threshold.
Right, where the data is so thin you aren't sure if an intervention is even legally or morally required yet. The cartographer principle applied to safeguarding dictates that areas with limited information are actually your primary blind spots.
So the students or employees who are completely off the radar.
Yes, the individuals who rarely draw attention, they never act out, they quietly blend into the background. A lack of data on them isn't reassurance, it's a massive unmapped territory.
I have a hard time with this, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about looking into a pitch black room
Yeah.
and you assume it's empty because you don't see furniture, okay, dangerous. But if a student is totally off the radar, getting their work done, no trouble at all, how do we know we're looking at a blank space on the map and not just a safe flat plane? How do you map something when there's zero outward evidence it's even there?
What's fascinating here is that this gets right to the heart of the challenge. We have to remember that maps are created, right? They're not just discovered lying on the ground.
Right.
You don't just stumble upon a fully formed topographic map of your social dynamics. You have to acknowledge this fundamental truth. A lack of disruption is not the same as safety.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy.
It is. A student might be quiet because they're totally content. Or they might be quiet because they're isolated, intimidated, or struggling with something they don't even have the vocabulary to express. A screen quiet means safe is a cognitive trap.
It really changes the job description, doesn't it? From just managing known problems to actively hunting for hidden ones. Because if we wait for the risk to define itself,
You're too late.
yeah, waiting for the student to act out, or a bullying dynamic to become public. It's entirely reactive.
You're reacting, not safeguarding. Not all risk comes neatly packaged with labels and step-by-step response protocols. You have to proactively identify the risk before you can manage it.
So an ineffective leader looks at the blank space and says, well, nothing's on fire, we're good.
Exactly. Well, the cartographer says, I have to go explore that.
So how does a DSL or, any leader practically do that? You can't map new territory by staring at spreadsheets in your office.
No, you definitely can't. And this is where the text highlights curiosity as a critical safeguarding strength.
Which is such a deliberate word choice. Because normally, safeguarding makes you think of compliance or audits or strict vigilance. But curiosity implies a totally different method.
It implies an investigative mindset. You map by active exploration. A leader has to probe unfamiliar concerns, not dismiss them. You have to engage with students to understand their context.
Medical perspectives, right?
Exactly. Ask yourself, why has this specific group of friends suddenly stopped talking to everyone else? What's the lived context behind this new slang? What are the mechanisms of this new app everyone is suddenly using?
It's operationalizing curiosity. Sending out scouts, basically, doing a pre-mortem on social dynamics and asking staff not just who's in trouble, but who do we know the least about right now?
Yes.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This leads to core insight 4 in the text, which is the power of naming.
Oh, this is huge.
The idea that once a place or risk is named, it becomes navigable. You turn a vague sense of unease into a defined threat.
The utility of naming a risk, I just can't overstate it. Putting a name to a concept instantly clarifies an entire team's understanding. It creates a shared vocabulary.
Which lets everyone actually talk about it.
Right. Say staff notice kids being unusually harsh to each other. If a leader investigates and formally names that dynamic as coercive control within a friendship group.
Boom. Instantly upgraded framework.
Exactly. You move from a generic kids being mean issue to a specific safeguarding category.
But wait, isn't there a danger in just slapping labels on things? Like if we rush to name a complex peer dynamic, are we actually creating a useful map? Or are we just putting up a restrictive signpost that might, force a kid into a rigid box?
That is such a crucial tension to navigate. And it's exactly why genuine curiosity has to come before naming. The text is very clear. Naming isn't about stereotyping.
Right, it's not a disciplinary box.
No, it's about defining an emerging environmental concern so the team can wrap their arms around it. If you have 50 staff members and they all have this vague, undefined suspicion about a specific hallway during recess,
Nothing changes.
nothing changes. The risk remains unmanaged. But if you explore that blank space and formally name the specific pattern of intimidation happening there, the vague unease becomes a structured framework.
The text actually calls this a professional truth. If you cannot name a risk, it is so much harder to respond to it.
Yeah.
What is unnamed remains unseen.
And what remains unseen operates with impunity. Naming brings the threat out of the shadows. It tells the organization, we recognize this type of interaction. We see this hierarchy. Once it has a name, you can allocate resources to it.
So what does this all mean for the team dynamic? Because there's a trap here, right? You can name a risk perfectly, but if you're the only person who knows the name...
Yeah, it's useless.
Yeah. A map locked in a single cartographer's desk drawer doesn't help the traveler crossing the mountains. And that brings us to section 3, maps as living, shared systems.
Because a map is inherently communal, you don't chart terrain just as personal trivia, you chart it so others can navigate safely. In safeguarding, a leader's insight only has value when it's shared and embedded into the daily operational systems.
This is a massive leadership shift. The DSL can't just be a lone genius hoarding knowledge. They have to translate it for everyone else. The text breaks this down into 3 layers. It calls them pastoral systems, foundations, developmental pathways, and leadership.
Yeah, let's track a hidden risk through those layers so you can really see the map working dynamically. Imagine a highly toxic social media trend hits the students. Your foundations layer, that's your frontline teachers and staff. They are the safety and care on the ground.
They're the ones who notice the kids are exhausted or super reactive after lunch.
Right, the frontline spots the blank space and flags it. Then it moves to the second layer, the developmental pathways.
Okay.
This team focuses on cultural and global awareness. They take that observation and map the context. They investigate why this trend appeals to this specific group, turning raw observation into deep understanding.
They figure out the drivers.
Exactly. And finally, the leadership layer takes that mapped data and builds a proactive strategy, maybe adjusting digital policies or starting targeted workshops before it becomes a severe crisis.
Wow, that's how the map gets utilized. But, if I try to navigate a city today using a map from 1995, I'm going to crash into a new building.
Oh, definitely.
The landscape changes. And in a car, an outdated map means a dented bumper. In safeguarding, relying on an outdated map means actual human beings get hurt. The text is totally uncompromising here. A system that doesn't update is unsafe. So how do we stop the map from getting stuck in 1995?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it requires embedding what the source calls the system-level question into your culture.
Okay, what is that?
Leaders have to constantly ask, where are the current blank spaces in our system and what might be happening there that we don't fully understand yet?
Oh, so that prevents you from ever assuming the map is finished.
The map is never finished. The terrain is never static. New digital coercion tactics will exist next month. New social hierarchies will form next term. A truly mapped safeguarding system trains the whole staff to spot the edges of the map.
Lean into their curiosity and feed that back to the DSL so the map keeps getting redrawn. I love that. But we do have to get to the honest bit here in Section 4. Where does this cartography analogy actually break down? Because human beings aren't mountains.
This raises an important question. The source is very careful to say what a DSL must not absorb from mapmakers. Safeguarding isn't just an academic exercise in exploration.
Thank goodness it acknowledges that. If the landscape keeps moving and changing its mind, how do we avoid getting paralyzed by the responsibility? We aren't just observing a dangerous river from a safe distance. We are actively trying to pull people out of it.
And that's the critical pivot. The cartographer observes physical terrain to make a reference tool, but the DSL maps risk in unpredictable human systems to intervene and protect.
Right. A mountain doesn't care if you map it. A teenager might actively resist it.
Exactly. Human behavior defies perfect categorization. The leadership mandate has to overrule the cartography mandate. Observation is preparation for intervention, not a substitute.
The map is just the starting point. It directs the rescue, but the rescue itself is the metric of success. If someone is in immediate danger, you don't stop and sketch the topography. You act.
The map informs the action, it never delays it.
That is such a vital distinction. As we pull all this together, it really shifts how we approach leadership in general.
Synthesizing the deepest insights here, it's all about our relationship with the unknown. The cartographer doesn't look away from blank spaces. They don't assume a lack of data means a presence of safety.
Right.
They explore, they define, they name the hidden risks, and they share that knowledge. Because the undeniable truth of navigating any complex system is that the most dangerous hazards aren't the ones you prepared for. The most dangerous hazards are the ones you haven't put on the map yet.
And for you listening, whether you manage a school, lead a corporate department, or organize a community group, the directive is clear. Don't wait for clarity to arrive on your desk. Waiting for clarity in a dynamic human system is just waiting for an emergency.
Yes.
We have to actively identify, name, and share risks so our teams can navigate safely. So the question you need to ask yourself tomorrow is, what specific risks or behavioral dynamics in your own setting remain unnamed, and how is that limiting your ability to respond?
It demands continuous reflection. But I want to leave you with one final kind of provocative thought that builds on this. We've spent all this time talking about the map and the territory, but consider the cartographer themselves.
Okay.
What if the map your organization is relying on was drawn entirely by people with the exact same background and perspective as you? Are your blank spaces actually full of data that you just aren't equipped to recognize?
Oh, wow.
Cultural and social blind spots can make obvious terrain completely invisible. It's not just about updating the map. It's about asking who is holding the pen.
That is so true. If you don't know what you're looking at, you'll just keep drawing blank spaces.
Yeah.
Next time you see a quiet, undisturbed area in your organization, don't assume it's a safe, flat plane. Remember the edge of the map. Bring your curiosity, send out your scouts, and ask yourself, what dragons are we currently feeling to name? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.